From the burning beaches of Dunkirk, where they left their heavy equipment behind, to the rhinos of the Rhine crossing that crushed the final German resistance, the British Army's vehicle history is a tale of desperate improvisation and eventual mechanical triumph. In 1939, British doctrine was split. They built tanks that could barely outpace a walking soldier, designed to grind through trench warfare that never happened. They built cruisers that were fast as lightning, but possessed armor so thin it could be pierced by a heavy machine gun. It was a painful learning curve written in steel and blood across the deserts of North Africa and the hedgerows of Normandy. But the British were innovators. They took American chassis and fitted them with guns that could kill tigers. They invented strange, specialized funny tanks that could swim, flail mines, and burn bunkers. They built the most versatile tracked carrier in history. Some of these machines were death traps, despised by the crews who called them, because they lit up the first time they were hit. Others were legends that earned the respect of himself. In this video, we break down every British vehicle of World War II. Let's begin with infantry tanks, armor over speed. Matilda I A11. A relic of a confused doctrine. This tiny, two-man tank looked like a cast-iron bathtub on tracks. It was armed only with a single machine gun, making it useless against other tanks. Its armor was decent for 1939, but it was so slow and undergunned that it was little more than a mobile pillbox. It served briefly in France before being rightfully abandoned. The next one, Matilda I A12. The Queen of the Desert. In the early years of the war, this tank was a monster. It featured thick, cast armor, up to 3 inches in places, that was impervious to the standard German anti-tank guns and Italian artillery in North Africa. However, it was hampered by a small 2-pounder gun that lacked a high-explosive shell, meaning it couldn't effectively fight infantry, the very thing it was designed to support. Up next, Valentine. The most produced British tank of the war. Built by, it was reliable, low-profile, and rugged. While cramped and suffering from the same small gun issues as the Matilda, its mechanical reliability made it a favorite. Thousands were shipped to the Soviet Union via Lend-Lease, where Russian crews appreciated its small size and tough engine in the winter mud. Now this is the Churchill A22. The heavyweight brawler. First seeing disastrous action it evolved into one of the best heavy tanks of the war. It looked archaic, with tracks running over the top of the hull like a WWII tank, but this design allowed it to climb slopes and cross mud that downed everything else. Heavily armored with up to 6 inches of steel on later models, it could take a pounding and keep moving. Next on the list is cruiser tanks, speed over protection. Cruiser IV A9, A10, A13. The early war speedsters. These tanks introduced the Christie suspension system, allowing for high cross-country speeds. However, they were plagued by thin, riveted armor that tended to spall, spraying the crew with metal fragments even if the shell didn't penetrate. They were mechanically fragile and suffered heavy losses in France and early North Africa. The next one, Crusader. The icon of the Desert War. With its angular, low profile and distinct geometric turret, it looked fast, and it was. It could hit speeds of 27 across the sand, but it was let down by its Liberty engine, which was prone to overheating and leaking oil. It famously struggled against the German Panzer III and IV due to its thin armor and unreliable mechanical heart. Up next, Covenanter. A failure of design. It looked like a Crusader but placed the radiator at the front of the vehicle next to the driver. This made the tank unbearably hot and prone to overheating. It never saw combat service, being relegated entirely to training duties in the UK, where it served to teach crews how to fix broken tanks. Now this is the Cavalier and Centaur. The transitional tanks. These were steps toward the Centaur was essentially a hull with an older, underpowered Liberty engine. They were mostly used for training or as specialized support vehicles, such as the Centaur IV, which was fitted with a 95 howitzer for D-Day fire support. Moving on to the turning point. This was the first British tank to combine a decent dual-purpose 75 gun with high speed and reliability. Powered by the Rolls-Royce Meteor engine, a derated version of the Spitfire's Merlin, it could fly across the battlefield at 40. Its boxy, riveted construction was outdated compared to the sloping armor of the Sherman, but its speed allowed it to flank heavier German cats. The next one, Challenger A30. A stopgap measure. The British needed to get their powerful 17-pounder anti-tank gun onto a chassis that could keep up with the. They took a hull, lengthened it, and slapped a massive, towering turret on top. It was tall, awkward, and thinly armored, but it provided crucial long-range firepower to cruiser squadrons. Finishing this section with the Comet. Arguably the best British tank of the war. Arriving in late 1944, it fixed the flaws of the. It featured a lower profile, a welded hull, and a new 77 high-velocity gun. It was fast, reliable, and could finally engage German Panthers on relatively equal terms. It was the bridge to the modern main battle tank. Now let's look at tank destroyers and SPGs. Archer. One of the weirdest vehicles of the war. It was a Valentine tank chassis with a massive 17-pounder gun mounted backwards. To fire, the driver had to park the vehicle with the rear facing the enemy. It was designed as an ambush predator, shoot, and then drive forward immediately to escape. The next one, Bishop. A desperate improvisation. The British needed mobile artillery in North Africa, so they welded a giant, fixed steel box onto a Valentine chassis and stuffed a 25-pounder field gun inside. It had a high silhouette limited gun traverse and was incredibly cramped for the crew, earning it a poor reputation. Up next, Sexton. The Canadian-built solution. Based on the reliable American M3 Lee Ram chassis, it mounted the British 25-pounder gun. It was open-topped, giving the crew room to work, and reliable. It became the standard self-propelled gun for British and Commonwealth forces for the rest of the war. Now this is the Achilles. The British take on the American M10 Wolverine. They took the standard M10 and replaced the American 3-inch gun with the devastating British 17-pounder. It was a lethal tank killer, capable of knocking out Tigers from long range, though it retained the open-topped vulnerability of the original design. The next one, Sherman Firefly. The most famous hybrid of the war. The British realized the standard Sherman's gun couldn't penetrate heavy German armor. They hacked the back of the turret off a Sherman, installed a new radio box to balance the weight, and squeezed in the massive 17-pounder gun. It was the priority target for all German gunners because it was the only Allied tank that scared them. Continuing with light armor and reconnaissance. Light tank VI. The pre-war standard. Fast and agile, but armed only with heavy machine guns and protected by paper-thin armor. In 1940, these were often forced into combat against German panzers with predictable, tragic results. The next one, Tetrarch. The airborne tank. Designed to be carried in the massive Hamilcar glider, this light tank could be dropped behind enemy lines. It famously saw action on D-Day, supporting the 6th Airborne Division. It was fast but incredibly vulnerable to anything heavier than a rifle. Up next, Dingo. A legendary scout car. Small, low-slung, and featuring a unique transmission that allowed it to drive as fast in reverse as it did forward. It had run-flat tires and was nearly impossible to flip. Scout crews loved it for its ability to get into trouble and get out fast. Now this is the Humber armored car. The workhorse of the reconnaissance regiments. Built on a truck chassis, it was reliable and armed with machine guns or a 37 cannon. It served in every theater from the deserts of Africa to the jungles of Burma. The next one, armored car. essentially a pocket tank. It took the turret from the Tetrarch light tank with a 2-pounder gun and put it on a wheeled chassis. It had independent suspension and great off-road capability, making it a potent threat to enemy light armor. Finishing this section with the AEC armored car. A heavy armored car built on an artillery tractor chassis. Later versions mounted a massive 75 gun, giving reconnaissance units the firepower of a medium tank on wheels. It was tall and ugly, but it packed a serious punch. Next on the list is Hobart's Funnies, specialized armor. Churchill Crocodile, the most terrifying weapon on the battlefield. This was a Churchill tank fitted with a flamethrower in place of the hull machine gun, towing a heavy armored trailer filled with fuel. It could shoot a stream of liquid fire over 100 yards. German troops were known to surrender instantly at the sight of one preparing to fire. The next one, Churchill AVRE, the Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers. It replaced the main gun with a petard mortar, a giant spigot mortar that fired a 40-pound explosive charge nicknamed the Flying Dustbin. It was designed to shatter concrete bunkers and level obstacles at point-blank range. Up next, Sherman Crab, a mine-clearing flail tank. It featured a rotating drum on the front with heavy chains attached. As it drove forward, the chains beat the ground, detonating mines safely in front of the tank. It was crude, loud, and kicked up a storm of dust, but it saved countless lives. Now this is the Canal Defense Light, CDL. A secret weapon. This was a tank, usually a Matilda or Grant, fitted with a blindingly bright searchlight in a specialized turret. It was intended to blind enemy troops during night attacks and illuminate targets, though it saw very limited use due to secrecy. Moving on to trucks, tractors, and utility. Universal Carrier, commonly known as the Bren gun carrier. This was the most produced armored fighting vehicle in history, a low, open-top tracked vehicle powered by a Ford V8 engine. It was used for everything: towing guns, carrying infantry, evacuating wounded, and bringing up tea. It was the Jeep of the British Army, but with tracks. The next one, Bedford QL, the definitive British truck, nicknamed the Queen Mary. It was a 3-ton 4x4 truck with a distinctive cab-over-engine design that gave it a tall, boxy look. It carried troops, ammo, and fuel, serving as the logistical backbone of the British advance. Up next, Austin K2Y, the ambulance, known affectionately as. It had a canvas-covered rear body and became famous for its role in the film Ice Cold and Alex, and for being driven by the then Princess Elizabeth during her service in the ATS. It was rugged, warm, and a welcome sight for the wounded. Now this is the C8, known as the Quad. This artillery tractor had a distinct beetleback sloping roof shape. It was designed specifically to tow the 25-pounder field gun and its limber. Its short wheelbase and 4-wheel drive gave it excellent traction in mud. The next one, Pioneer, the heavy recovery vehicle, a massive, slow-moving beast with huge tires and a high-torque engine. It was used to tow tank transporters and recover disabled vehicles from the mud. It was practically unstoppable off-road, moving at a walking pace but pulling immense loads. Finishing this section with the AEC Matador, a medium artillery tractor, famous for its flat front and wooden cargo body covered by a curved canvas roof. It was the primary mover for the medium 5.5-inch guns and heavy anti-aircraft artillery. It became a civilian icon after the war as a timber truck. Finishing off with motorcycles. 16H, the standard military dispatch bike, a single-cylinder, side-valve machine that was simple and robust. It wasn't fast, but it could run on low-quality fuel and keep going through the worst weather. The next one, BSA M20, the workhorse, heavy, slow, and rugged. It was nicknamed the Bumblebee for the sound of its engine. Dispatch riders used these to carry messages between headquarters when radio silence was necessary or lines were cut. Finishing off with a tiny, collapsible motorcycle designed for the Special Operations Executive, SOE, and paratroopers. It fit inside a standard parachute drop container. The idea was a soldier could land, assemble the bike in seconds, and ride away. In reality, the small wheels struggled on rough ground, but it remains a fascinating piece of commando gear. Part 3, the outro. From the tiny, collapsible to the terror of the Churchill Crocodile, the British vehicle arsenal was a testament to adaptability. They started the war unprepared and ended it with some of the most specialized and effective combat vehicles in history. Looking at this list, which vehicle do you think was the most vital to the British war effort? The versatile universal carrier or the heavy-hitting Sherman Firefly? Let us know in the comments below. This is USGI Archives. Subscribe for more.